This is a 2024 Lexus IS300 F-Sport. It's one of the last naturally aspirated sport compact sedans available anywhere. Is that going to help it, or is it really just holding it back? This one behind me is the F-Sport model, which they've finally brought to the IS300. My question is though, is it worth your money to fully spec out this IS300 like it is here, or are you better off stepping up to the more powerful IS350? Let's go for a drive. So much red, blood red. The one I'm driving, all-wheel drive F-Sport 3. It's a little bit different for you guys in the States. The IS300 is not, well, all the IS models are not available with rear-wheel drive in Canada, except for, of course, the IS500. I wouldn't really want that car with all-wheel drive. It doesn't seem natural to pair that V8 with all-wheel drive anyways, so I'm fine with that. But for all the other models, all-wheel drive is standard here in Canada. Starting price here, $47,000 Canadian. This one, as tested, $60,000 Canadian, or about 50,000 USD. We are not able to get the 4-cylinder turbo engine here in Canada, and that is because the rear-wheel drive IS300 is spec'd with that 4-cylinder turbo, whereas the all-wheel drive, Canada or the US, is spec'd with this naturally aspirated 3.5 liter V6. If that sounds confusing to you, you're not the only one. All right, sport mode, we don't have launch control, but we will just hit the gas, see what it does. 6,500 RPM red line. Gauge cluster goes red when we're about to hit red line. Not slow, not fast. So you might be thinking, well, Marcus, I've looked at the IS350 and that also has a naturally aspirated 6-cylinder engine. So what's the difference? Well, this one in the IS300 is simply a detuned version of the one you get in the IS350. Now, in the IS350, you get 311 horsepower and I think about 270 pound-feet of torque. Here you get 260 horsepower and 236 pound-feet of torque. So about 50 less horsepower here. And once you figure out that it is nothing but a tune, that Lexus has simply detuned the engine here because they don't want to step on the toes of the IS350, you can never escape that. It's going to always be in the back of your mind as an IS300 owner. Now, is it enough power? Yeah. It's enough power for 99% of people in 99% of situations. So there's that. 3,000 RPM, full throttle. And we're kind of waiting for torque to build. Right around 4,000, it begins to wake up. And that's not in line with the rest of the market and 4-cylinder turbos and the power bands that you feel with those cars, but it is in line with the IS lineage. These are NA cars through and through, and Lexus is proud of that, especially with the IS500, which I haven't had the chance to drive. But that being said, the engine's great. It's quiet when you want it to be quiet. Road noise is quiet when you want it to be quiet. And while we don't have that sudden kind of ramp up of torque, that turbo shove that the 4-cylinders get, the V6 does make the IS feel a little bit more refined than a lot of its inline 4 turbo rivals. After a week with the car, the smooth roll-on of torque, the instantaneous torque directly connected to the throttle really made itself apparent. Really smooth engine overall. Again, for 99% of scenarios, it's great. All right, so F-Sport, what does it get you? It is largely, here on the IS300, an appearance package. The only kind of tactile feedback you would get from the F-Sport over the standard model would be the seats, the sport seats, and the leather steering wheel. Something you would actually feel or touch, right? Everything else is just visual, which isn't necessarily a problem. Although I guess the front grille does give you a little bit of extra aerodynamic bits that actually do work to pull in more air. So that's functional, not that you're gonna feel that at all. So the front grille is a little bit different. You can see these corner bits are a little bit different as well. And then with the F-Sport 3 here in Canada, we do have these LED beam headlights, which you get as well. So slightly different if you were to put them back to back. We get these 19-inch F-Sport wheels. If you go with the IS350, you do get exclusive BBS wheels. This is just such a great looking car. You know, in the TLX video, in my review on that car, I praised it for being one of the best looking sedans on the market. I think the IS has it beat. I think so. If not, it's very, very close. Love this line on the rear hip as well. It flows really nice. And you come around back here, F-Sport gives you the wing as well. Minimal chrome. And then there's kind of this line that accentuates it when you can see the rear door goes in just there and creates a little bit of an hourglass kind of shape. It is painted in this iridium color. You know, it's another form of silver. Another difference, you do get staggered tires with the F-Sport. So the rears are 265s and the fronts are 235s versus 235s all the way around. So if you are pushing it, if you're in the snow in the wintertime, all-wheel drive, a little bit more grip there, a little bit more confidence in the rear end if you want to try and kick it out. It might not play with you, but you could try. Back to the all-wheel drive. It is a default 70-30 split, 70% torque to the rear and 30 to the front in normal dry scenarios, and it will send up to 50 to the front wheels. And the rear-wheel drive models get an 8-speed auto. This one's paired with a 6-speed. It's great in most scenarios. Where it isn't good is, if we go here, we have our drive modes, Eco, Normal, and Sport. It's not so great when you're pushing it. It's not it feels like it doesn't really want to play with you when you put it in Sport and you begin tugging on the paddle shifters and telling the car what to do. You're better off leaving it in auto, which is always a disappointing strength of an automatic transmission in a sports luxury sedan. This is not just a luxury sedan. Yeah, it's just, it hesitates to downshift. Huge torque interruption, and it kind of throws the car a little bit off balance if you're pushing it slightly. When you downshift, it's upshifts are a little bit better. Like, I drove an original Lexus ISF back in the day, late 2000s ISF. This transmission, when you're pushing it, is not much better than that transmission. And people didn't like that transmission in 2009, 2010. So if that's any comparison I can make. But again, the Lexus IS is one of the final Lexus products to get updated. This generation came out almost 10 years ago. I really do hate to really harp on the transmission, but I've driven a TLX, I've driven a Mercedes C300, and both of those transmissions are better. You do get the tach in the center of the gauge cluster, which is awesome. And with the F-Sport, they kind of mimic the LFA colors and the way the gauge cluster looks. I love it. This is a perfect blend of digital and analog. The actual surround for the tach is a physical piece. And if you hit this button on the steering wheel, it will move to the side and display a little bit more information if you want, or you can just center it and have the tach. It's great. Steering wheel, we get, of course, the leather steering wheel here on the F-Sport. It is heated. It's not heated on the top. We do have a physical clock. That is great. I love how Lexus still does this. That kind of, just visually, it's a visual cue that kind of sets it apart, brings it up like a tier in your mind. The rest of the interior, like, if you're into the two-tone red interior, go for it. I believe you can only get this on the F-Sport models. Otherwise, you just get all black. I would probably have a tendency to go all black. It is incredibly comfortable. Amazing seats. It's got two-way lumbar. TLX from Acura has four-way lumbar. Take note of that. But the seats are pretty much perfect. Great bolsters, incredibly comfortable cabin here. It's quiet. Yeah, we do have heated and ventilated seats with F-Sport heated steering wheel as well. And the infotainment being controlled by buttons is great. However, then we have these temperature controls, which are like haptic touch feedback where you scroll, but then you can also kind of tap it. Not the greatest, but that's not the worst part of the infotainment. The worst part is this touch pad. It's the worst part of interacting with the IS300 by a long shot. At least Acura's system will, when you place your finger in the corner of the touchpad, it will automatically place the cursor, so to speak, in the top corner, and then you can move from there. Whereas this, if your finger's over to the right side and you want to scroll, you gotta do a bunch of little swipes to get anywhere, and it is just, it's a pain to use. Probably one of the worst touchpad systems. Aside from that, everything else is laid out nicely. We've got some good materials, not too much piano black anywhere you would touch. We've got this nice brush kind of aluminum there. And then, yes, the F-Sport comes with the Mark Levinson 17 speaker sound system, comes with the LED headlights, and of course the 360 camera here, which isn't the best. The resolution on the backup camera is not good. And it doesn't have so many options when it comes to the 360 cam. It's mostly just the resolution is not up to par. The F-Sport also gets, of course, the 10.3-inch screen here versus the standard 8-inch. No wireless charging. No wireless charging available, and no wireless Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. The other Lexus models have gone on to something new. They have changed the infotainment completely. It's all touchscreen. The IS is the final one to get updated, so do take that into consideration. And there are no USB ports in the rear seats. Some people have complained the rear legroom is a little bit small, and yes, as I mentioned, shorter wheelbase here than the TLX. So the TLX has a little bit more rear legroom. I didn't really notice that as much. I'm 5'9". It was the headroom that was bringing me a little, not quite a little bit of neck pain, but if I was an inch or two taller, it would be a problem in the back seats. Steering weight gets a little bit heavier when we're in sport, but not too much. Really kicks about 5,000 RPM though. And it goes, it's got some momentum to it. You need to give it some momentum, but overall, you know, for a car weighing just under 4,000 pounds, it's agile, it feels rear bias still, which is awesome, and dynamically it is still, when you're pushing it, fun to drive. Steering feel, not the greatest. The TLX has a proper rear differential that does real torque factoring. This does not have any of that. You are able to spec the Torsen limited slip differential, but that's only on the top of the line IS350s. All right, so there is a solution, in my mind at least. If you were to spec the more powerful IS350, 50 extra horsepower, about 44 extra pound-feet of torque from the same engine, and the peace of mind knowing that you've squeezed the most out of this engine, if you were to spec that with, in Canada, what they call the F-Sport 2 package, it's the exact same price, but with extra power, and you get the crucial adaptive suspension, which as a driver is a huge difference in feel compared to the static suspension. They are very good dampers, but the adaptive suspension, I'd imagine, I haven't driven it, but would give you just that extra variable if you want to dial up the driving experience. Now in the States, for you guys, that's just an IS350 F-Sport, and then the adaptive suspension is simply a $770 option. Now you do give up a few things for the same price. If you want more power, you give up luxury. So you do give up the 17 speaker Mark Levinson audio system, you give up the triple beam LED headlights, and you also give up the 360 camera. So those three things are what sets it apart. If you're willing to live without the subpar 360 cam, I would say the audio system's good. That would be tougher to give up. But if you're willing to give up those luxuries and you want more performance, I would just do that. Same price, around $60,000 Canadian or 50,000 USD, IS350 F-Sport, or here in Canada, F-Sport 2. That's where my money would go as a driver. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the like button, it really helps us out. If you want to see more videos, they're coming, so we'll see you soon.